Some economists believe FutureGrowth's suspension of loans to state-owned enterprises could have a domino effect. Chief economist at the SA Institute of Race Relations, Cruickshank, joins us to discuss the potential consequences. Ian, good evening, well, good afternoon to you and welcome. We talk about the domino effect, and now we have Denmark's JOHANNESBURG Bank saying, no, thank you, we're not putting any more money in. We also heard through the interview with Bloomberg that other lenders are likely to also withhold their money. The net effect on these six SOEs, what will that be in the short term?
First of all, has it happened before? Yes, 1985. Chase Manhattan Bank pulled the plug. Sorry, no more loans for you. That's what this bank has done, the Danish bank has done now. And so what could happen? It would mean South Africa would not find funds to offset our deficits on the current account and on the budget deficit. These run into billions, many billions, hundreds of billions, and you can say, well, where's the money going to come from? You'll have to sell something if you can't borrow it. We've got nothing working that's for sale, and this is the tragedy. So what will mean then is we can't import any goods because there's no money to pay for them. This is the potential end result if we don't get sorted out pretty quickly.
It sounds like an Armageddon for our economy, given that we are in such a precarious position. It also means that infrastructure spending plans, a lot of other things would have to be put on ice there.
That's absolute fantasy, as it has been all the time. You know, the 900 billion rand plan for infrastructure development, 5 million new jobs. Hold on, that was 3 years ago and we haven't seen any yet. It's just, it can't happen because there's no money to support it. There hasn't been any, now there's going to be even less because we can't get credit.
Okay, given now, Ian, that on day 2, just 24 hours or so after FutureGrowth's announcement, we have this announcement by Denmark's JOHANNESBURG Bank. What happens if more and more people join the chorus?
Well, there is, I suppose you could say, there will always be capital available at a price. Now what we're seeing is there are more people saying they're more interested in the return of their capital than the return on their capital. But there's always a few convenient lenders who will say, well, I know the going rate is 10%, but if I charge you 20%, I'll let you have the money. And that is the problem. We'll be able to do less because we're paying so much in interest, and it'll all have to go into social grants, literally keeping people alive, instead of building the economy or even maintaining the economy.
We heard FutureGrowth in that interview just before we started talking, saying that if there is, well, he described it as an unsettling environment, and there were certain conditions around which they would think about putting money back in. What is it going to take to get there? I mean, aren't their actions setting it up for failure anyway?
Well, that's the way it looks. However, what would need to be done is a demonstration of responsible government.
Which would be what? The President standing back from this Oversight Council? What are some of the things we need to do?
Well, I think that needs to be done. We need to change the leadership so that investors can say, perhaps the direction is going to change. Perhaps they're going to give democracy a chance after all. We've got to move away from the level we're at now, where there seems to be a preference for absolute control over a derelict state rather than a share in democracy. That is what has to change, and it can be changed.
But did they act prematurely, Ian? Because you heard from government saying we've listened, we've put some remedial action in place. Give it a chance to bear some. Fruit. Nothing has happened other than the announcement that we heard in the post-cabinet briefing, I think it was, where the President would then chair this Oversight Committee on SOEs. What has actually changed? What has actually changed? Or is it perception-driven, much like the way markets and shares are driven?
What has changed? The situation has worsened. I think that really is the problem, and there has to just be a realization, an owning up, let's just say, to management difficulties. I think that's what we have to call it. The economy has been mismanaged, and until that happens, until there's an acknowledgement that we're going to change this, we have to learn to live within our means, just as we do. We can't spend more than we're earning, because pretty soon the bank's going to say, hey, you've got an unauthorized overdraft. That's what we've got with our foreign funders. So as soon as we see we're not spending money on wasteful expenditure, we have to start going in there, and cutting out wasteful expenditure, non-productive expenditure. That can be done, it must be done. It's been done in certain parts of the country where there's been different political leadership.
Well, what happens, because it seems as if the only recourse now is, as you say, people who might lend at a premium, double premiums, quadruple premiums potentially. The other option, of course, is Treasury. But Treasury doesn't have this money, does it?
No,
to be able to bankroll these SOEs. through the gap that would be left by disinvestment?
No, they don't have enough. Well, look, we've got the government's national reserves of the Reserve Bank, 40-odd billion rand. But it wouldn't take long to run through that. That's what happened in 1985. The old government was only brought to the negotiating table when they'd run through the reserves. They were flat broke. I hope we don't have to get into that stage again. That's a worst-case outlook, but something can be done. There are certain members of government who say, look what's happening, look at the economy. And maybe those who have been busy feathering the nest say, if we want to get more feathers for those nests, we're going to have to make sure that it's a more welcoming investment climate.
Ian, thank you very much for talking to us. Hair's blown back. Ian Cruickshank, the chief economist at the Institute for Race Relations, talking about the consequences now of these banks taking away money from those 6 state-owned entities.